Denver's 16th Street Mall has some real problems. First off, Americans' general disinterest in spaces like that. They used to be far more popular. Then you layer on vacant storefronts, long-term construction, some high-profile crimes, and a political narrative that cities are to be feared. As construction finally wraps up, our Mark Salinger looks at Denver's next challenge, convincing people to come back to the 16th Street Mall.
After spending $175 million on construction on the 16th Street Mall, the concern now is making sure people actually come back to enjoy it.
The experience today is not the ultimate experience that we want on the 16th, and we need to do a lot to change that perception.
The price tag for new art, activities, and marketing was set at $1.9 million today at Denver City Council. Money the Johnson administration and the Downtown Denver Partnership argue is vital to making sure people return to a street that's been filled with fences and hard hats for years.
How do we bring color to the space? Things that just feel like someone's taking care of it.
The nearly $2 million would go towards trying to get people to visit downtown again. It would fund events like live music and street markets. It would pay for security to make people feel safe in an area that's seen several high-profile crimes recently. And it would allocate money for art to cover up empty storefronts where businesses have moved out.
This is part of a broader strategy for downtown.
Council members had concerns.
It pains me to see what it currently is.
And serious questions about how to move forward from the challenges that the area has faced since the construction started.
Doesn't matter how pretty you make something, if it still brings up memories for people, we're never going to break through that.
Downtown Denver has seen a 35% decrease in property and sales tax revenue since the beginning of the pandemic. That's cost the city $45 million.
Vacant, dark retail space is not good for anyone.
The money's already been spent on construction. Now the city needs to convince people to come back.
This is about how do we really make the most of this infrastructure investment by being able to show how amazing this is.
The money would also go towards rebranding the 16th Street Mall with a new name and marketing campaign after the rough reputation it's gained over recent years. Council members objected to any taxpayer money being used in that, since not every neighborhood gets this type of attention. They decided to table allocating any of this money until next month over several concerns, Kyle.
Renaming is tough, right? Because if they spend a lot of money, they come up with a new name and it's hokey or corny, then people are going to be mad. If they decide to just call it 16th Street and they pay more than $2 taxpayer dollars for that, then I'm going to drag them on TV.
We could come up with that name
So
ourselves.
what do they do?
I don't know what they're going to do. Listen, there's already a sign on the street. It says 16th Street, so maybe they'll just name it that. I looked back at all the presentation today, and it referred each time to the 16th Street Mall, or what we know as the 16th Street Mall, as simply 16th Street every time. I don't know if that's where they're going with this, but that seems to be what they're using right now, not the 16th Street Mall.
R.I.P. Mall. All right, Mark Salinger, thank you. A jury is now deciding whether to convict a former Clear Creek County deputy of second-degree murder for the shooting and killing of Christian Glass. Closing arguments wrapped up today in Andrew Bune's retrial. In June of 2022, a young man named Christian Glass called 911 for help. He was having a mental health crisis and he crashed his car. The 22-year-old refused to get out of the car when deputies arrived. He was panicked. He said he was scared. Deputy Bune broke the car window, shot Glass with beanbag rounds, fired a taser at him, then shot him 5 times. Bune was found guilty on lesser charges in his last trial. There was one member of the jury who was a holdout on second-degree murder. So prosecutors are trying again, arguing that Glass was simply defending himself in that moment when he swung a knife toward the window of his car where another officer was standing.
Don't fail Christian again. Go back in the back, look at all the evidence, argue about it if you have to, look at it again if you have to. But when you're done, apply the law to the facts of the case and find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of second-degree murder.
The defense says that Deputy Bune shot Glass because he believed that Glass was trying to stab that other officer. They say that perceived threat justified the use of deadly force.
Ladies and gentlemen, he wishes every day he would have had him throw those weapons out. Of course he does. Of course. You've heard testimony. That's appropriate not to have people reach for weapons. Of course he wishes it would have gone differently. But again, That's hindsight. And the law tells us we have to put that aside.
Jury got this case around 3:30 in the afternoon. They broke for the day at 5. They'll be back in the morning to continue deliberating. Colorado needs more housing. You don't get a lot of argument about that. When we get it, though, it tends to be either apartments or single-family homes. The so-called missing middle, more affordable option for ownership are condos and townhomes. Yet the rules on how to deal with shoddy construction when that happens, those have tied the state legislature in knots for years. A new bill drafted by Democrats with some Republicans on board looks to jumpstart condo construction in our state by rebalancing Colorado's construction defect protections. The bill's sponsors argue that the current laws leave construction companies too vulnerable to lawsuits, and that is what has slowed down building. The new proposal would beef up building standards by requiring third-party inspections throughout the condo construction process. The backers of this bill say that passing those inspections along the way and being issued a certificate of occupancy would create a paper trail and should protect builders if they get sued. The bill would also set new standards for construction defect lawsuits and allow condo owners to access more information about their home's construction. Critics of this bill, which include progressive Democrats, say that the protection should not just be limited to the so-called middle market housing like condos. Big backer of this bill, though, is Democratic Governor Jared Polis, who says that it's focused on expanding the most affordable housing option.
Goal is to incentivize construction of condominiums because we know historically condominiums have been the most affordable home ownership option.
To do so, make sure that we carve out a path for condo liability reform that of course balances homeowner protections, de-risks the market, and allows for more condos to be built and sold.
So truly, watch the left flank of the Democratic Party on this bill, along with Colorado's Trial Lawyers Association. They killed a similar construction defect bill in the legislature last year. Love Thy Neighbor is being put to the test in Montrose, where a church is being taken to court for housing the homeless. Montrose Methodists started letting people sleep in their courtyard after a camping ban took effect in that city last year. Well, the city doesn't like it. Our Julissa Arizari has that.
A picture taken in the back alley of Montrose Methodist Church is just a snapshot of an issue that has brought Paul Zanger and so many others to court.
Never in my life. I never thought I would be here. But, you know, God moves in mysterious ways.
Zanger is a spokesperson for the Methodist Church, a now haven for the homeless. After a public camping ban took effect late last year, the church opened its courtyard for the unhoused to set up their tents.
We're not meeting the needs of perhaps the people who are most desperate in our world, most desperate in our society. So there is much more work to be done.
But the camp is a temporary solution it seems the city does not want to see. So far, Zanger says the church has been cited more than 20 times related to the encampment for things like storage of litter, keeping of junk, and nuisance on premises, things the church says they're working on. The city then requested an emergency abatement order to get rid of the camp completely. Today, church members filled the courthouse for that hearing with a prayer that was eventually answered.
It's hard not to be overly happy, right? I mean, it's a relief. For now, it is good news.
In a statement to the Grand Junction NBC station, the city says in part they continue to have concerns and, quote, will apply the laws of our municipal code equally to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all Montrose residents. The church believes that's exactly what they're doing by providing this option. They know it doesn't fix the problem, but they hope it gives city leaders a better view of it.
I think that we need to come together to listen to both sides. We need to see each other as real human beings.
The church has another court date in 2 weeks to take care of that laundry list of citations. Now, the city does have a shelter in town, but church leaders say a lot of people at their camp don't want to be separated from their loved ones or have dogs that are not allowed inside. They hope to work with the community to find a much more permanent solution.
All right, Julissa, for folks who have read the book, right, it's completely unsurprising that a church would want to shelter the homeless, right? And this is not the only place where this has happened.
No, actually, it happened in Castle Rock as well. Back in July, a church there was housing people in their parking lot. They had some RVs set up. City did not like that. Judge sided with the people at the church, which was obviously very exciting for them. But when they had that argument, they actually cited churches in Oregon as well as in Ohio that also do similar things at their church.
Very interesting stuff. Julissa Irizarry, thank you very much. Denver's Florence Crittenden campus is not just a school for teen moms. It's a place where young women and their children, though, are able to turn any kind of challenge in their life into a foundation for success across multiple generations. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports FlowCrit's well-known work in our community. The teenage mothers they serve get help to finish their high school diploma, knowing that their kids are safe and well cared for right nearby at FlowCrit's Early Childhood Education Center. Each young family gets one-on-one case management and support to overcome any challenges in their lives, whether they need help with housing or transportation, job skills, or just a family's basic needs. FlowCrit works with these young mothers and their kids for years to keep both generations on the path to success and self-sufficiency. So, for instance, think of all the doctor's appointments that pregnant women and young kids need. FlowCrit has an on-campus medical center offering obstetrics and pediatrics, so students don't have to miss a day of school to schlep back and forth to the doctor or to take their baby to another appointment. It is that idea of multi-generational wraparound services tailored for these young families that truly change their lives. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. $14 million and counting in your microgiving proves the power of small donations. You know the deal. I'll never ask you to give if I don't, so as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. More than 4,000 of you have signed up to become the backbone of this program by simplifying your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, and with it, you support every nonprofit that we feature here. It's meant more than $30,000 in weekly donations lately. Use that same QR code or text to get there.
Probably a once-in-a-generation thing that happened here.
Colorado's craft distillers say they're on the verge of a boom after a big shakeup in the world of whiskey. And Denver is preparing to spend millions of dollars for the mayor to defend the city's immigration policies under investigation by Republicans in Congress. That's next. Denver is lawyering up to handle an investigation by congressional Democrats into Denver's so-called sanctuary status, basically the way the city limits cooperation with immigration agents outside of rounding up violent criminals. Last night, City Council approved a $2 million contract with a legal firm in D.C. ahead of Mayor Mike Johnson's testimony before the House Oversight Committee next month. The committee requested testimony from Johnson along with the mayors of D.C., Boston, and New York. Republicans say those cities are harboring criminals and hindering safe immigration enforcement, though New York City's mayor has since flipped to Team Trump as his own criminal indictment is being dropped by the feds. Along with their testimony, the mayors are supposed to turn over all kinds of documents and communications about the way the cities handle immigration. According to this contract, Denver will work with the lead attorney who specializes in congressional inquiries and served as White House counsel under President Biden. Contract doesn't just go through next month's hearing, it lasts through early next year, as both sides agreed that, quote, investigative activity is likely to continue following the hearing.
Hello, it was beautiful to see the sun today, wasn't it? And that sun helped to warm us into the lower 20s. After a bitter cold start, we actually have moderating temperatures and a better drive on I-25 and I-70, even though you can't really see it. We started at -7 this morning in Denver. That was a record, shattered the old record of -4. Many areas well below zero this morning. We're still in the mid-teens right now. Temperatures will be cold again tonight, but without a lot of wind. Wind chill isn't the big story in Denver. Not the case out in northeastern Colorado and western Nebraska, where extreme cold warnings continue through 11 o'clock tomorrow. Could see those wind chill values to 15, even 20 below through the overnight hours into tomorrow morning. Next system coming our way from the northwest. It's already on the way. The moisture will scour out. We get some clearing skies tonight, a sunny start, but by the time we get to about 6:30 tomorrow night, we could see snow flying in Denver. The snow will go overnight through mid-morning Friday, and then we're done. With sunshine, temperatures should warm nicely on Friday, but that fast-moving storm is going to drop 1 to 3 inches of snow in Denver and 3 to 6 in the Front Range foothills. And as we look at your 7-day forecast, we do have a weather impact alert for the commute tomorrow night and Friday morning, ahead of a wonderful warming trend that'll see sunshine and 60s just in time for your weekend.
Move over Kentucky bourbon. Here comes Colorado's American Single Malt Whiskey. All right, the name is chewy, but the whiskey is smooth. Hey, a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each night at 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus, free to download on your TV. And Next is also a podcast for your ear holes. Find it anywhere you get your podcasts. The last time the U.S. government officially named a new whiskey was about 50 years ago, the birth of bourbon. Well, now there is another new whiskey, American Single Malt, and Colorado wants to be the next Kentucky.
Single malt whiskey has got more depth and complexity than the big flavors of bourbons and ryes and wheats.
American Single Malt is kind of a new whiskey to the U.S. in the last 20 years.
And now when we're talking about American Single Malt, we have this set rule of what that needs to be.
So today we're here to talk about American Single Malt whiskey and the new standard of identity that the Tax and Trade Bureau has just ratified.
The U.S. government giving us an official category for what we call American Single Malt whiskey.
Distilled at one distillery in the United States, and then aged in oak containers, oak barrels.
100% malted barley.
There's various other rules. Colorado is well known for making malt whiskey, and now we can call it American Single Malt whiskey and know what that means.
And especially in Colorado, where we've got a unique climate that matures our whiskey in a unique and very special way compared to other microclimates around the United States.
I think Colorado makes a lot of great whiskey. I think it invites them all to jump into this category with us and make some great single malts and be a place on the map for American single malt.
I think it's the most exciting because we're on the world stage, and I came over to the US and I specifically wanted to make American single malt whiskey.
It is exciting to see consumers starting to realize what this is and have a new American style of whiskey.
We've been writing a new chapter in whiskey history as craft distillers for 15 years, 20 years, and finally the government has given us a name for that chapter.
That one guy's Kentucky accent was pretty cool. Those three gentlemen hope that with the new designation that whiskey lovers will soon see American Single Malt as its own category on menus and on shelves soon. We are back with your feedback next. Thank you. Florence Crittenden is pretty legendary. That nonprofit has run a school in Denver for decades where pregnant teenagers and then young moms can go to complete their high school education while their babies are cared for right there on campus. Nowadays, their wraparound two-generation care tackles any issues that each mother and child might have so that both of them end up on the path to success. And these young women do succeed. More than 80% of their eligible seniors at Flow graduate, and our support will help those families. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get the link to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating to FlowCrit to help those young families. James on Twitter or X or whatever we're supposed to call it now says, teen moms and babies, who wouldn't support that? Such a great cause, helps generations. I truly do love the fact that, right, you've got these young mothers who are so concerned about their kids, but they're right there on campus with them. They've got medical care right there. It's just such a good situation for young people whose lives might otherwise be in turmoil. Speaking of turmoil, 16th Street Mall, what to do about it? What to call it, a text. Among other things, I think Times Square level security and police presence will be necessary to lure people back and help them feel safe. I think that the law enforcement presence of Times Square would be helpful. I don't know if anything else about Times Square would be helpful.